Dear Songwriter, if you are like me, often you'll write some lyrics, you'll record them, you'll write them out, whatever it is that you do, you look back at them or you listen back and you think to yourself, oh, this is way too wordy, way too many words happening here. I'm all too familiar with this struggle, and this actually happened to me recently yet again, but I fortunately was able to catch myself, and I made some necessary changes to a particular song that I'm working on. So in this episode, I'm going to share this story with you in hopes that you can learn from what I learned from this experience. My name is Connor Frost. I'm a songwriter and professional mentor who's now helped hundreds of songwriters to write their first collection of songs so that they can get their music out into the world, their songs out into the world, and live their most musical and creative lives. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome again. This is episode 101. And yeah, I just had some pretty wordy lyrics recently. This is something that comes up a lot, both for myself as well as the many students that I have worked with. So I'm going to break it down for you today, let you in on what happened to me the other day and what I learned from it. So before we totally dive in, I want to break down why I think you might be writing wordy lyrics. After working with many students and writing many songs, I've boiled it down to these two reasons. There's probably offshoots of these two reasons as well. But reason number one is that you're attached to your melody, right? And so what I mean is that you really like your melody, and if you were to cut out or change up the lyrics that you have, it would mean altering your melody. And maybe you like how the syllables kind of like perfectly match up and you really like this particular rhythm. Either you've written an amount of words to fit that rhythm, or you've written the lyrics first and written the melody from that. And if you were to change your lyrics or cut your lyrics, that would mean needing to change things that maybe you don't want to change or that you're afraid to change. And this is something that I have dealt with myself and certainly with students of mine. It has been, I don't want to call it an issue, maybe issue is too strong of a word, but it's something that has come up. So that's number one, you're attached to your melody. Number two reason in terms of why your lyrics might be wordy is maybe you really want to make sure that you're including like every important detail in your lyrics to really tell the story that you're trying to tell. So the idea of cutting out lyrics could mean that certain points are getting missed. Maybe you're trying to speak to a bunch of different concepts, or maybe you're trying to introduce as many characters as possible. And so in order to do that, you need to have a lot of words potentially. So that's number two in terms of why maybe you're getting caught up in including every important detail. Regardless of whether or not this is an issue for you, one of these reasons, this issue in general, putting lyrics to melody and vice versa is definitely not easy. What I've learned is that if we're not willing to change words, if we're not willing to cut words, if we're not willing to change rhythmic components of our melodies, then we might be stuck with this problem of lyrics being too wordy. So it begs the question, how do we address this issue? Let me share what happened to me, and I'm going to do so by breaking it down into 3 steps or 3 things that happened, however you want to think about it. So step number 1 was me realizing and figuring out why the lyric was too wordy. It's one thing to think that maybe a lyric is too wordy, but to land and conclude like, yeah, this is too wordy. There's too much going on here. There's too many words here. That's a whole other thing. So the lyric in question initially read like this. I see some friends come in to welcome me with some gifts that I can't wait to open. So those are 2 lines, and they're split from a melodic standpoint into motif A and motif B. So I'm going to read that again, and I'm going to break that down even further. So motif A, the first line, I see some friends come in to welcome me. Okay, motif B, meaning the second melody of this, with some gifts that I can't wait to open. So again, all together, motif A, motif B. I see some friends come in to welcome me with some gifts that I can't wait to open. So these words perfectly match the melodic motifs of the previous 2 lines, which is why I wrote this lyric the way it is with the amount of syllables that it has. It was a 4-line stanza, and it really fit well with lines 1 and 2. And it really worked melodically from motif A to motif B. But when I sang this melody with those exact lyrics that I just read, I recorded it, listened back, I realized two things. Number one, it was a mouthful. Even just saying it right now, right? Felt like marbles were in my mouth. Even more so when singing it. The number two thing I realized was I was using 2 lines for a point that I could really just make with 1 line. Meaning, I don't need 2 lines to get across the point that I was trying to get across. Basically that this person is, at least momentarily, happy and excited about friends coming to visit them. Okay, so that's step 1, was figuring out why it was too wordy. Step 2 was, once I figured that out, I went through that specific lyric that I was just talking about with what I call the lyric machete. This is a songwriting tool. This is not a literal physical object that I'm talking about, for what it's worth. And this songwriting tool that I kind of made up includes sifting through your lyrics and cutting out the words, getting rid of the words that you wouldn't need for the purposes of the story and the song in general. Important to note that when you are going through with this lyric machete, you should get that trademarked, you need to separate and detach yourself from the melody. And I know that's hard to do because lyrics and melody, they are so inextricably linked. But for the purposes of this exercise and this step that I went through, I need to tell myself, you know what? I'm going to just focus on the words. In making it about the words only, I had a few rounds of slicing and dicing up lyrics, using this lyric machete, getting rid of some words, changing certain words, trying to find words that were more efficient, that spoke quicker to the point. And so after doing that for a few rounds, I realized I could be more concise and I could be more efficient with what I was saying, which led to the realization of what I was talking about before, going from 2 lines down to 1 line. So once I made the decision, like, okay, 1 line it is. Again, not really worrying about the melody yet. I came up with 2 revisions. So revision number 1 is, I see my friends with gifts I can't wait to open. Revision number 2, my friends come in with gifts I can't wait to open. Now, both of those revisions include just the melody motif A, whereas before, the 2 lines included both motif A and motif B. For both of these revisions, separate ideas, separate possibilities, but they both use motif A in terms of melody. Cool. So came up with those revisions. Now, I'll be honest, at the time of recording this, I'm still deciding on which one to go with. But again, they still match 1 line and 1 motif. Shaving this lyric down from 2 lines to 1 line, 2 motifs to 1 motif, this gave me 2 different options. So option A was that I could write new lyrics to represent what was previously motif B to better progress the story. So essentially, I could include more information because I'm being more concise, because I'm being more efficient with what I'm trying to say in that verse. I can actually add another element to the story that helps progress the story. That's option A. Option B, I could leave out the lyrics entirely and let there be a moment of just instrumental. Now, this is radical. The idea of not only cutting lyrics, but cutting like actual sections or parts of sections or melodies that previously were a huge part of the identity of the song, just cutting them out and saying no words there. So that was step 2, was to go through lyrics with a lyric machete and come away with those revisions. Step 3 was to make a decision, what I wanted to do. Again, option A, write new lyrics, or option B, leave out the lyrics entirely. And this was because I now had more space to work with. I had created more lyrical space and more space in general. And I went back and forth for a while. I tried to add to the story, thought of some lyrics, even came up with some ideas that I didn't hate. But I ended up landing on option B, which was to leave out lyrics entirely. Meaning, I made that revision that took place of motif A. And instead of having lyrics for the next line, I just let the instrumental do its thing. So basically, it looked like this. Line 1, I see my friends with gifts I can't wait to open, followed by no lyrics and just instrumental. I decided to just have an instrumental there because melody and lyrics, right? They can only really resonate with your listeners if your listeners have a chance to really fully consume and process any line, any stanza, any section of the song that you're writing. This means that the words you end up leaving out sometimes can be just as important as the words and notes, lyrics that you include. And actually, by leaving out the lyrics, in this case, I'm giving the listener the opportunity to catch up to the storyline, both melodically as well as lyrically. Also, this lyrical break is going to allow us to focus and draw in even more attention towards not only the previous lyric and melody, but also the melody that is going to come. Because that instrumental section serves as a moment of reflection from that past melody, and also simultaneously is a launch pad for the melody that's about to come. Because that next melody that comes is a totally different melodic line. So we have this little break before we dive back in. Now, I did do something with the instrumental to hearken back to what was previously motif B. So instead of singing that melody, because I made the decision, you know what, I don't want words there, what I did in building out my demo was I mimicked that same vocal melody in one of the synthesizer instruments, which means I'm still creating a feeling of repetition by having an instrumental hook which outlines that melody, but I'm giving listeners a break from lyrics. Okay, so that was step 3, is I decided what I wanted to do. Now my step 4 eventually is going to be to decide on which one of those more concise lyrical lines to run with. That's going to be my next thing that I need to do. So to summarize, if I were to give you the TLDR of this podcast episode, I would say be open to cutting out and changing words. Be open to it. If you're too stubborn with that, I worry that you're not going to experience the leveling up of lyrics that could happen because you're too tied to past ideas, past rhythms. And if you're feeling insecure about changing those words, cutting out those words because you're not confident in your ability to change rhythms as it relates to your melodies, then I would recommend addressing that. Also, be open to creating that space and going as far as to leave out certain lyrics entirely. And I know that's a scary thing, but be open to it. At the end of the day, right, there's power in conversational and also concise lyrics. As lyric writers, we're storytellers, right? Not every song has to tell this clear and obvious story, but there are always going to be storytelling elements, certain characters, certain places. So we have to ask ourselves, right? Are we writing lyrics that are detailing what's happening in the story? Or are we writing lyrics that detail why a story is worth telling? Hope this is helpful. As always, hope it brought you some value. And that's all I got. I hope you have a good week of writing. And I'll be back for episode 102. Take care. Happy writing.